Marcus adjusted the ornate golden headpiece on Lord Vincent Blackwood's head with practiced hands. The heavy crown, embedded with dark rubies that seemed to drink in the candlelight, required careful positioning. Vincent stood perfectly still in his private chambers, gazing into the ancient mirror that had reflected his unchanging face for over 3 centuries. "The ceremony begins in 1 hour, my lord," Marcus said softly, his fingers working to secure the ceremonial piece. At 62 years old, Marcus had served the Blackwood family for 40 years, first under Vincent's supposed father, then seamlessly transitioning to serve Vincent himself when the previous lord had mysteriously disappeared. Vincent nodded slowly, his pale blue eyes studying his reflection. Tonight marked the annual gathering of the old families, those who had maintained their power and influence through generations of careful planning and darker methods. The public knew them as wealthy philanthropists and business moguls, but, behind closed doors, they practiced traditions that stretched back to medieval times. "Has Captain Rodriguez arrived with his security team?" Vincent asked, adjusting his black silk shirt beneath the formal coat Marcus had laid out. "Yes, my lord. Captain Eduardo Rodriguez and his men have taken their positions throughout the estate. They arrived an hour ago as scheduled." Marcus stepped back to examine his work, then moved to retrieve Vincent's ceremonial gloves from the mahogany dresser. The Blackwood estate sprawled across 200 acres of rolling hills outside the city. The main house, a Gothic revival mansion built in the 1800s, served as both Vincent's residence and the meeting place for tonight's gathering. 23 other families would attend, each bringing their own security details and ceremonial items passed down through generations. Marcus had noticed something troubling earlier that evening. While directing the placement of additional candelabras in the Great Hall, he had observed Captain Rodriguez speaking quietly with one of his subordinates. The conversation itself wouldn't have concerned Marcus, but he had caught a glimpse of something metallic tucked beneath Rodriguez's formal jacket. In 40 years of service, Marcus had developed an eye for potential threats. "My lord," Marcus began carefully, "I noticed Captain Rodriguez appears to be carrying something unusual this evening. Perhaps it would be wise to remain in your private quarters until the situation can be assessed." Vincent turned from the mirror, his expression sharpening. "Explain." "While I was overseeing the preparation of the ceremonial hall, I observed the captain adjusting something beneath his jacket. The outline suggested a weapon of some kind." Marcus chose his words carefully. He had learned long ago that Vincent valued direct information without unnecessary speculation. The annual gathering followed strict protocols established decades ago. No weapons were permitted in the ceremonial areas. Security personnel carried only communication devices and basic restraint tools. The families had agreed to these terms to maintain the peaceful nature of their meetings and prevent any incidents that might draw unwanted attention. Vincent walked to his private safe, hidden behind a painting of his supposed ancestor. The combination lock clicked softly as he opened it and withdrew a small silver device that looked like an ornate pocket watch. The device, created by a craftsman who served the old families, could detect metals within a 50-foot radius. "How long has Rodriguez been employed with the security company?" Vincent asked, activating the device. "Approximately 6 months, my lord. He replaced the previous captain when Jonathan Miller retired." Marcus remembered Miller well. The man had worked with the families for 15 years and understood the importance of discretion. Rodriguez came highly recommended, but recommendations could be falsified. The device in Vincent's hand began to emit a soft pulsing tone, indicating the presence of metal objects throughout the house. This was normal, given the abundance of decorative items, kitchen implements, and standard security equipment. However, when Vincent adjusted the frequency to filter out known metals, a single strong signal appeared from the direction of the main floor. "Interesting," Vincent murmured, studying the device's display. "Marcus, what time did Rodriguez arrive this evening?" 7 o'clock, my lord. He and his team conducted their standard security sweep before the other families began arriving at 9. Marcus glanced at the ornate clock on the mantelpiece. It was now 8:15. Vincent had survived for over 3 centuries by trusting his instincts and the observations of those who served him faithfully. Marcus had never given him reason to doubt his judgment. If the elderly servant noticed something amiss, it deserved serious consideration.
The families gathering tonight represented some of the most powerful influences in government, finance, and industry.
Their meetings involved discussions of territory, resources, and the maintenance of their collective power.
These conversations, while not explicitly illegal, would certainly attract unwanted attention if overheard by the wrong people. Has anyone new been asking questions about tonight's gathering?
Vincent asked, moving to his desk to review the evening's schedule. Not directly, my lord, but I did receive an unusual phone call yesterday.
Someone claiming to be from the Historical Society asked about the age of certain artifacts in our collection.
When I offered to schedule a proper appointment, they declined and asked specifically about tonight's date. Marcus had found the call strange enough to make note of it in his daily log. Vincent set down the schedule and looked directly at Marcus.
You believe Rodriguez may not be who he claims to be?
I believe caution would be appropriate, my lord.
Perhaps the evening's activities could be postponed until his background can be verified more thoroughly.
Marcus had seen enough in his decades of service to know when something felt wrong.
The old families had enemies. Government agencies that suspected but couldn't prove their influence.
Rival organizations that coveted their power. Religious groups that viewed their practices as dangerous.
Any of these groups might attempt to infiltrate their security arrangements. Vincent walked to the window overlooking the main entrance.
Several black vehicles were parked in the circular driveway, and he could see security personnel stationed at various points around the grounds. Everything appeared normal, but appearances could be deceiving.
Marcus, I want you to contact James Morrison immediately.
Tell him there may be a security concern and ask him to delay his arrival by 1 hour.
Morrison served as the unofficial coordinator for the family's gatherings and would be able to discreetly notify the others.
Of course, my lord. Marcus moved toward the phone, then paused.
Should I use the secure line?
Yes, and, Marcus, after you make the call, I want you to remain in the servants' quarters. Do not interact with Rodriguez or his men directly. Vincent's tone carried the weight of centuries of command. As Marcus left to make the call, Vincent returned his attention to the metal detection device. The signal from the main floor remained strong and consistent. Whatever Rodriguez was carrying, it was substantial enough to register clearly through the device's sensors. Vincent had faced many threats over the centuries. Vampire hunters in medieval times who had somehow learned the truth about his nature.
Government agents during various wars who suspected his true age. Business rivals who had tried to expose or eliminate him. He had survived them all through careful planning and the loyalty of those who served him.
Tonight felt different. The careful infiltration of their security suggested someone with significant resources and patience. The timing, coinciding with the annual gathering when all the families would be present, indicated someone who understood their operations intimately. Vincent opened his desk drawer and withdrew a small crystal vial containing a dark red liquid. The contents would sustain him for several days if he needed to avoid feeding normally. He had learned long ago to prepare for unexpected situations. The sound of Marcus returning interrupted his preparations. The elderly servant appeared calm, but Vincent could detect the subtle signs of concern in his posture. Mr. Morrison will delay the family's arrival as requested, my lord. He asked no questions but indicated he would take appropriate precautions. Marcus closed the door behind him and ensured it was locked.
Good. Now, I need you to activate the house's internal security system.
Set it to record all movement in the main areas. Vincent had installed the system years ago as a precaution against exactly this type of situation. The internal security system operated independently of the standard security arrangements. Hidden cameras and motion sensors throughout the house would capture detailed information about anyone moving through the building. If Rodriguez or his men were planning something, Vincent would have evidence of their actions.
The system is activated, my lord. All feeds are recording to the secure server in the basement vault.
Marcus had operated the system several times before during previous security concerns.
Vincent studied the metal detection device again. The signal had moved slightly, suggesting Rodriguez was walking through the house rather than remaining in a fixed position.
This could be normal patrol behavior, but, combined with the other suspicious elements, it reinforced Marcus's concerns.
Marcus, in your assessment, how many of Rodriguez's men are stationed inside the house? Vincent asked.
I observed 4 individuals inside, my lord, plus Rodriguez himself.
3 more are positioned on the grounds. Marcus had made mental note of each security person's location as part of his usual attention to household details.
5 armed individuals inside the house represented a significant threat if they had hostile intentions.
Vincent could handle normal human opponents easily, but firearms changed the dynamics considerably. Even his enhanced abilities had limitations against multiple attackers with modern weapons. The clock chimed 8:30.
Under normal circumstances, the first families would begin arriving in 30 minutes.
Vincent needed to determine Rodriguez's true intentions quickly, before the situation could escalate further.
I'm going to test Rodriguez directly, Vincent announced, moving toward his formal coat. I want you to monitor the security feeds and be prepared to contact the authorities if necessary.
Marcus looked concerned.
My lord, perhaps it would be safer to simply cancel tonight's gathering and investigate Rodriguez's background thoroughly. The families have traveled from across the country for this meeting. Canceling without absolute proof of danger would raise questions and potentially expose us to greater scrutiny.
Vincent understood the delicate balance required to maintain their secrecy.
As Vincent prepared to leave his chambers, Marcus made one final adjustment to the ceremonial headpiece. The golden crown caught the candlelight, casting dramatic shadows across Vincent's pale features. For just a moment, he looked exactly like what he truly was, an ancient predator preparing to face a potential threat. Be careful, my lord, Marcus said quietly as Vincent moved toward the door. Whatever Rodriguez is planning, he has clearly invested significant time and effort in this deception. Vincent paused at the threshold. Marcus, if something happens to me tonight, you know what to do.
Marcus nodded solemnly.
They had discussed contingency plans many times over the years. The elderly servant understood exactly how to contact the other families and implement emergency protocols if Vincent was compromised. As Vincent stepped into the hallway, the metal detection device in his pocket pulsed more rapidly. Rodriguez was somewhere nearby, and whatever he was carrying was substantial enough to suggest serious intent. The next hour would determine whether Marcus's suspicions were correct, and whether the careful secrecy the families had maintained for generations was about to be shattered. Vincent moved silently through the darkened corridors of his mansion, his enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger. The metal detection device in his pocket continued its soft pulsing, growing stronger as he descended the main staircase toward the ceremonial hall. Centuries of survival had taught him to trust both technology and instinct equally. The great hall stretched before him, illuminated by dozens of candles in ornate holders. Marcus had arranged everything perfectly for the evening's gathering. Ancient tapestries hung from the walls, depicting scenes that most people would assume were merely decorative but actually recorded significant events in the family's history. The long oak table at the center of the room could seat 30 people comfortably. Vincent paused near the entrance, using his enhanced hearing to locate the security personnel. He could detect heartbeats and breathing patterns from various positions throughout the house.
Rodriguez's heartbeat stood out as elevated, suggesting either physical exertion or stress. Interesting.
Captain Rodriguez, Vincent called out in a normal tone, knowing the man would hear him regardless of his location in the house. Footsteps approached from the direction of the kitchen. Rodriguez appeared moments later, his professional demeanor intact despite what Vincent now recognized as signs of nervous tension. The man was approximately 40 years old, well-built, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and his formal security uniform was impeccable.
Good evening, Lord Blackwood.
I was conducting a final security check before your guests arrive. Rodriguez's voice carried a slight accent that Vincent couldn't quite place. Not unusual in itself, but, combined with the other suspicious elements, it added another layer of concern.
Excellent. I wanted to review the evening's security arrangements personally.
Vincent stepped into the hall, positioning himself where he could observe Rodriguez's reactions carefully. This gathering is particularly important to our family's business interests. Rodriguez nodded, maintaining eye contact. Of course, sir. My team has secured all access points and established communication protocols.
We're prepared for any contingency.
The metal detection device pulsed more rapidly as Vincent moved closer. Whatever Rodriguez was carrying was concealed expertly, but its metallic signature was substantial. Vincent had encountered enough weapons over the centuries to recognize when someone was armed for serious confrontation. "Tell me about your previous experience with private security," Vincent said conversationally, circling slowly around the room as if inspecting Marcus's preparations.
"I understand you replaced Jonathan Miller when he retired."
"Yes, sir. I have 15 years of experience in executive protection. Previous clients included several Fortune 500 executives and government officials." Rodriguez's response came smoothly, but Vincent detected micro-expressions suggesting rehearsed answers.
Vincent paused beside an antique display case containing medieval artifacts.
Among them was a ceremonial dagger that had belonged to his actual father centuries ago. He touched the glass case lightly, noting how Rodriguez's attention focused immediately on the blade.
"Fascinating pieces," Rodriguez commented. "Are they authentic medieval artifacts?"
"Some of them, yes.
My family has been collecting historical items for generations." Vincent watched Rodriguez's reflection in the glass case.
The man's posture had shifted subtly, and his right hand had moved closer to his jacket.
"Do you have an interest in historical weapons?"
"I studied medieval history in college. These pieces appear to be exceptionally well preserved." Rodriguez stepped closer to examine the display, and Vincent noticed a slight bulge beneath his jacket that confirmed Marcus's observations. The sound of a car engine outside drew both men's attention. Vincent glanced toward the window and saw headlights approaching up the long driveway. According to his instructions, James Morrison should have delayed the family's arrival, but someone was clearly approaching ahead of schedule.
"Are you expecting additional security personnel tonight?"
Vincent asked, noting how Rodriguez's tension increased noticeably at the sound of the approaching vehicle.
"No, sir. My team is complete as briefed."
Rodriguez moved toward the window to observe the approaching car, and Vincent saw him reach for something inside his jacket. Vincent's enhanced reflexes allowed him to cross the room in an instant. Before Rodriguez could draw whatever he was reaching for, Vincent's hand clamped down on the man's wrist with crushing force.
Rodriguez gasped in pain and surprise, trying to pull away.
"I think we should discuss your real purpose here," Vincent said calmly, his grip preventing Rodriguez from accessing his concealed weapon.
"Marcus observed you carrying something unusual this evening."
Rodriguez's professional mask finally slipped, revealing the determined expression of someone who had come prepared for confrontation. "Release me immediately, or this situation will become much more complicated."
"For whom?"
Vincent applied additional pressure to Rodriguez's wrist, hearing small bones begin to crack. "You've gone to considerable trouble to infiltrate my security arrangements.
I'm curious about your employer's motivations."
The approaching car had stopped outside, and Vincent could hear multiple doors slamming. Whoever had arrived was bringing several people, which didn't match the expected arrival patterns for the family's gathering. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Rodriguez managed through gritted teeth.
"This isn't just about you or your little gathering tonight."
Vincent increased his grip further, and Rodriguez's concealed weapon fell from his jacket to the floor.
It was a modified tranquilizer gun, designed to deliver multiple doses quickly.
The implications were immediately clear: someone wanted Vincent and, possibly others, captured alive, not killed. "Tranquilizers suggest you need us conscious," Vincent observed, kicking the weapon away.
"That narrows down the list of potential employers considerably."
Heavy footsteps approached the main entrance, and Vincent heard the distinctive sound of multiple people moving in coordinated fashion.
Military or police training, not the casual arrival of party guests.
Rodriguez had backup arriving right on schedule. "Dr. Sarah Chen will be very interested to meet you," Rodriguez said with grim satisfaction. "She's been researching your family for 3 years.
Vincent recognized the name immediately.
Dr. Chen was a geneticist who had published papers suggesting that certain bloodlines might carry unusual genetic markers. Her research had come dangerously close to identifying the physiological differences that separated the old families from normal humans.
And she believes tranquilizing me will provide better research opportunities than simply requesting a blood sample? Vincent maintained his grip on Rodriguez while listening to the approaching footsteps. "She knows what you are," Rodriguez said quietly. "All of you. The extended lifespans, the unusual physical capabilities, the carefully maintained bloodlines. She has documentation going back centuries." The front door opened without anyone knocking, confirming that Rodriguez's backup had their own access methods. Vincent counted at least 6 distinct sets of footsteps, plus additional movement that suggested more people were positioning themselves around the house. "Lord Blackwood." A woman's voice called from the entrance hall. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. I believe Captain Rodriguez has explained the situation to you." Vincent released Rodriguez's wrist and stepped back, allowing the man to retrieve his tranquilizer gun. The immediate tactical situation had shifted dramatically. Fighting his way through multiple armed opponents in his own home would create exactly the type of attention the families worked to avoid. "Dr. Chen," Vincent called back, "you've gone to considerable trouble for a simple research study. Perhaps we could discuss your interests in a more civilized manner." Dr. Chen entered the Great Hall accompanied by 4 individuals wearing tactical gear and carrying sophisticated equipment. She appeared to be in her early 40s, with short black hair and intense brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her manner suggested someone accustomed to getting what she wanted through careful planning and determination. "Lord Blackwood, or should I say, Vincent Blackwood, born approximately 1687 according to our research." Dr. Chen set a tablet computer on the oak table and activated a presentation. "We have documented evidence of your presence at significant historical events spanning over 3 centuries. The tablet displayed photographs and documents that made Vincent's blood run cold. Pictures of him at various periods throughout history, sometimes with different names but always the same face. Birth certificates and death certificates that didn't match. Business records showing his involvement in companies across multiple centuries." Impressive research, Vincent admitted. But hardly proof of anything supernatural. Families often name children after ancestors. Physical resemblances can be striking across generations. "DNA evidence from multiple sources suggests otherwise," Dr. Chen replied, switching to laboratory results on her tablet. "Blood samples from various historical locations, hair fibers from period clothing in museums, even saliva traces from antique dinnerware. All match your current genetic profile exactly." Vincent realized the scope of Chen's investigation far exceeded anything he had anticipated. She had been collecting physical evidence for years, building a scientific case that would be difficult to dismiss or cover up through normal channels. "What exactly do you want?" Vincent asked directly. "Cooperation," Dr. Chen said simply. "You and the other families represent an evolutionary branch that could revolutionize our understanding of human genetics. The longevity factors in your DNA could benefit millions of people worldwide." Rodriguez had moved to position himself between Vincent and the nearest exit, while Dr. Chen's other team members spread out to cover the room's other access points. They clearly had detailed floor plans of the house and understood exactly how to contain someone with Vincent's capabilities. "And if I refuse to cooperate voluntarily?" Vincent asked. "Then, we proceed with our backup plan," Dr. Chen replied, gesturing to her team. "We have enough tranquilizer compound to sedate someone with your enhanced metabolism for several hours. Our research facility is equipped to maintain you safely while we conduct our studies." Vincent's enhanced hearing detected movement throughout the house as additional team members secured the building. They had planned this operation extensively, accounting for his abilities and preparing countermeasures. Dr. Chen's people were professional and thorough. "How many of my staff are still conscious?" Vincent asked. "Marcus is unharmed but secured in the servants' quarters," Dr. Chen assured him. "We have no interest in harming anyone unnecessarily. Our focus is purely scientific." The sound of multiple vehicles outside suggested more people were arriving. Vincent hoped it might be the families coming to investigate the delayed meeting, but the engine sounds suggested more tactical vehicles rather than the luxury cars the families typically used. "Dr. Chen, you're making a fundamental error in your assumptions," Vincent said calmly. "You believe you're dealing with a genetic anomaly that can be studied and replicated through normal scientific methods. Our research indicates otherwise, Dr. Chen replied confidently. Genetic analysis shows clear markers for enhanced metabolism, accelerated healing, and extended cellular longevity. These traits can be isolated and synthesized. Vincent smiled slightly, showing just the tips of his fangs. Your genetic analysis missed some rather important details. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she observed Vincent's changing features. His canine teeth had extended into distinct fangs, and his pale blue eyes now carried an unnatural luminescence in the candlelight. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Impossible, Dr. Chen whispered, stepping backward involuntarily. Rodriguez, Vincent said without taking his eyes off Dr. Chen, you may want to reconsider your employment options. Rodriguez raised his tranquilizer gun, but Vincent moved faster than human reflexes could track. The weapon flew across the room before Rodriguez could fire, and Vincent stood directly behind Dr. Chen with one pale hand resting lightly on her shoulder. As I was explaining, Vincent continued conversationally, your research has identified some accurate information, but reached entirely wrong conclusions about its source. Dr. Chen's team members had their own tranquilizer weapons trained on Vincent, but none dared to fire with their employer in such close proximity. The tactical situation had reversed completely in a matter of seconds. Your enhanced metabolism hypothesis was partially correct, Vincent explained. But the longevity isn't genetic in the way you understand it. It's a condition that's transmitted through very specific circumstances. Dr. Chen was breathing rapidly, clearly struggling to process what she was witnessing. You're claiming to be an actual vampire. I'm not claiming anything, Vincent replied. I'm simply correcting the flaws in your research methodology. The sound of additional vehicles outside grew louder, and Vincent recognized the distinctive engines of the cars used by several family members. It seemed James Morrison had decided to investigate the delayed meeting despite Vincent's instructions. Dr. Chen, Vincent said quietly, you now have a choice to make. You can continue your research project and discover exactly how dangerous your assumptions have been. Or you can gather your team and leave immediately, with the understanding that this conversation never occurred. Rodriguez had retrieved his tranquilizer gun but seemed uncertain whether to use it. Dr. Chen's other team members maintained their positions but showed clear signs of nervousness as they processed what they had witnessed. This is scientifically impossible, Dr. Chen insisted, though her voice carried less certainty than before. Science has many limitations, Vincent replied. Particularly when dealing with phenomena that predate modern scientific understanding by several thousand years. The approaching vehicles had reached the main entrance, and Vincent could hear car doors slamming followed by concerned voices. The families had arrived to find their gathering site surrounded by tactical vehicles, which would require careful explanation to avoid unwanted attention. Vincent released Dr. Chen and stepped back, his features returning to normal human appearance. You have approximately 2 minutes to make your decision before this situation becomes much more complicated for everyone involved. Dr. Sarah Chen stood frozen in the Great Hall, her scientific worldview crumbling as she processed what she had witnessed. The tablet in her hands displayed years of genetic research that suddenly seemed meaningless compared to the impossible reality standing before her. Vincent Blackwood had just demonstrated capabilities that couldn't be explained by any known biological process. Outside, the voices of the arriving family members grew more concerned as they discovered the tactical vehicles surrounding the estate. Vincent could distinguish James Morrison's voice among them, along with Elena Vasquez and Thomas Bradford. 3 of the most influential members of their group, each bringing their own security details and expecting a routine ceremonial gathering. Rodriguez, Dr. Chen said shakily, initiate Containment Protocol 7. Rodriguez hesitated, glancing between his employer and Vincent. The tranquilizer gun in his hand seemed inadequate after what he had just witnessed. Dr. Chen, perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. Our research is too valuable to abandon now, Dr. Chen insisted, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. We need to document these capabilities properly. Vincent moved to the window overlooking the main entrance. Through the glass, he could see James Morrison speaking animatedly with Elena Vasquez while gesturing toward the tactical vehicles. Their own security personnel were taking defensive positions, creating a standoff situation that could escalate rapidly.
Dr. Chen, Vincent said calmly, you're about to discover that your research subject has very influential friends. Friends who have spent considerable resources maintaining their privacy. The front door opened, and James Morrison entered without ceremony. At 75 years old, he commanded immediate respect through pure presence rather than physical intimidation. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, and his expensive suit showed no signs of the hasty travel required to reach the estate. Vincent, Morrison said, taking in the scene with sharp gray eyes, I see our security concerns were well-founded.
Elena Vasquez followed Morrison into the hall.
At 48 years old, she appeared to be one of the youngest family members present, but Vincent knew she had actually been turned in 1923. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her business attire suggested she had come directly from a corporate meeting.
James, Elena, Vincent acknowledged them with relief.
Allow me to introduce Dr. Sarah Chen and Captain Eduardo Rodriguez. They've been conducting unauthorized research into our family histories.
Dr. Chen's team members shifted nervously as more family members entered the hall.
Thomas Bradford appeared next, his imposing 6-foot frame and stern expression suggesting someone accustomed to getting his way. Behind him came Margaret Sullivan, whose elderly appearance concealed one of the sharpest minds Vincent had encountered in 3 centuries.
Dr. Chen, Morrison said politely, I understand you've been investigating certain genealogical matters. Perhaps we could discuss your findings in a more private setting.
Dr. Chen clutched her tablet defensively. Our research has uncovered evidence of genetic anomalies spanning multiple generations.
This information could revolutionize medical science. Genetics, Elena said with dark amusement.
How refreshingly modern.
Vincent, has she figured out the truth yet? Vincent nodded toward Dr. Chen.
She's observed certain demonstrations that challenge her scientific assumptions. Margaret Sullivan moved closer to examine Dr. Chen's tablet. Despite appearing to be in her 80s, Margaret's movements carried surprising grace and speed. Impressive research, my dear.
Though I notice you've missed some rather important historical contexts.
What historical contexts?
Dr. Chen demanded, though her earlier confidence had clearly evaporated.
Well, Margaret said thoughtfully, you have documentation of Vincent's presence at various events over the past 3 centuries. But, you seem to have overlooked certain significant details about those events. Margaret activated the tablet and scrolled through Dr. Chen's research files with surprising familiarity with modern technology.
For instance, this photograph from the 1918 influenza pandemic shows Vincent working with medical personnel in Boston.
But, you fail to note that the death rates in areas where he worked were significantly lower than surrounding regions. Dr. Chen studied the photograph more carefully.
That's statistically improbable.
Or this business document from the 1929 stock market crash, Margaret continued. Vincent's financial company provided emergency loans that prevented several hospitals from closing.
Interesting timing for someone allegedly focused on personal gain.
Thomas Bradford stepped forward, his expression serious. Dr. Chen, your research methodology has one fundamental flaw. You assumed that extended lifespans automatically indicate selfish motivations.
Our genetic analysis focused on biological mechanisms, Dr. Chen protested. Motivations weren't relevant to the scientific inquiry. They're absolutely relevant, Elena interjected.
Because your research threatens to expose people who have spent centuries helping humanity in ways that would be impossible if their true nature were widely known.
Vincent moved to join the group around Dr. Chen's tablet.
Show her the London files, Margaret.
Margaret scrolled to a section of historical documents Dr. Chen hadn't accessed yet. During the London Blitz in 1941, several of our families coordinated rescue efforts that saved thousands of lives.
Their enhanced physical capabilities allowed them to work in conditions that would have killed normal humans.
Dr. Chen studied the documents with growing amazement.
These are verified historical records. But, if your enhanced capabilities were used for humanitarian purposes, why maintain such extreme secrecy? Because, James Morrison explained patiently, human nature tends toward fear of anything different.
Even beneficial differences.
Our families learned centuries ago that helping humanity works best when humanity doesn't know exactly who is providing the help.
Rodriguez lowered his tranquilizer gun completely, clearly struggling to process the conversation. Dr. Chen, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Dr. Chen's tactical team members exchanged uncertain glances.
Their mission had focused on capturing subjects for research, not engaging with individuals who had apparently spent centuries working as covert humanitarian agents.
But, the scientific potential, Dr. Chen insisted. If these capabilities could be replicated, the medical benefits would be enormous. At what cost? Vincent asked quietly. How many of us would survive your research process? And, what would happen to the humanitarian work we've been doing? Margaret pulled up additional files on the tablet.
Current projects include disaster relief coordination, medical research funding, and educational initiatives in developing regions. All conducted through carefully maintained cover identities.
Elena gestured toward the window. Dr. Chen, how many people do you think would die if these operations were disrupted by scientific exposure?
Dr. Chen studied the scope of activities displayed on her tablet.
The family's humanitarian efforts spanned multiple continents and affected millions of lives indirectly. Disrupting these operations would have consequences she hadn't considered.
Your research assumed we were hiding selfish activities, Thomas Bradford said.
In reality, we're protecting altruistic ones.
The sound of additional vehicles outside drew everyone's attention. Through the window, Vincent could see local emergency services arriving.
Someone had reported the unusual activity around the estate.
Dr. Chen, Morrison said urgently, you now have a much larger problem.
Local authorities will want explanations for your tactical team's presence here. What exactly are you prepared to tell them? Rodriguez spoke up. Dr. Chen, we don't have authorization for this operation in this jurisdiction.
If local police become involved, our legal situation becomes very complicated.
Dr. Chen looked around the hall at the assembled family members, each of whom appeared calm despite the potential crisis. How do you handle these situations normally?
Carefully, Elena replied.
With considerable advance planning and proper documentation. None of which you appear to have arranged.
Vincent moved toward his desk and activated an intercom system.
Marcus, are you able to respond?
Marcus's voice came through clearly.
Yes, my lord.
I'm secure but under guard by Dr. Chen's personnel. Please contact our legal representatives and ask them to coordinate with local authorities regarding tonight's security exercise, Vincent instructed.
Security exercise? Dr. Chen asked. Margaret smiled slightly.
Dr. Chen, you're about to receive an education in crisis management. Vincent's legal team includes former government officials who specialize in explaining unusual situations to local authorities. Within minutes, the intercom activated again. My lord, Marcus reported, Attorney Patricia Wells is en route with appropriate documentation. Local authorities have been informed of a pre-planned security assessment. Dr. Chen stared at the efficiency of the response.
You have contingency plans for research intrusions? We have contingency plans for every conceivable threat, Thomas Bradford replied. 3 centuries of experience teaches thorough preparation. Rodriguez approached Dr. Chen hesitantly. Dr. Chen, I recommend we accept whatever arrangement they're willing to offer. Our legal exposure is significant. Outside, the sound of emergency vehicles was subsiding as proper explanations were provided.
Vincent could hear Patricia Wells's voice coordinating with local officials, her legal authority clearly recognized and respected.
Dr. Chen, Vincent said, you have another choice to make.
You can continue trying to expose us, knowing that it will disrupt humanitarian efforts affecting millions of people.
Or you can consider alternative arrangements. What kind of alternatives? Dr. Chen asked warily. Margaret spoke up. Your research skills are impressive. With proper direction, they could be used to enhance our humanitarian efforts rather than threaten them. Elena nodded.
We fund medical research through various foundations. Legitimate research that helps people without requiring exposure of our capabilities.
You're offering me employment? Dr. Chen asked incredulously.
We're offering you purpose, Morrison corrected. Your research goals were admirable.
help people live longer, healthier lives. Those goals can be achieved through cooperation rather than coercion. Vincent studied Dr. Chen's expression carefully. The choice is yours. But, consider this, your current research would help a few dozen people at most. Working with us could help millions. Dr. Chen looked at her tablet one more time, scrolling through the evidence of the family's humanitarian activities. The scope was staggering. Medical research, disaster relief, educational funding, infrastructure development in impoverished regions. All coordinated quietly by people whose enhanced capabilities allowed them to work effectively across multiple centuries. What about my team? Dr. Chen asked finally. Rodriguez answered immediately. Dr. Chen, I speak for all of us when I say we prefer legitimate employment over potential federal charges. Thomas Bradford smiled for the first time that evening. We can always use qualified security personnel who understand the importance of discretion. Marcus entered the hall, having been released by Dr. Chen's team members. My lord, Attorney Wells has resolved all issues with local authorities. The situation is contained. Vincent moved to the window and observed the tactical vehicles departing, followed by the emergency services. Within minutes, the estate appeared normal again, ready for the delayed family gathering. Dr. Chen, Vincent said, if you accept our offer, tomorrow you'll begin reviewing our current medical research projects. You'll find them more advanced and better funded than anything you've encountered. Dr. Chen closed her tablet and looked around the room at the assembled family members. Each of them had maintained their humanitarian efforts for decades or centuries, using their unique capabilities to benefit humanity while remaining hidden from public view. I accept, Dr. Chen said quietly. But, I want full access to your research methodologies and complete transparency about your operations. Agreed, Morrison said immediately. But, understand that transparency comes with absolute responsibility. Lives depend on maintaining our secrecy. Elena smiled warmly at Dr. Chen. Welcome to the most important work you'll ever do. As the family members began preparations for their delayed gathering, Vincent reflected on how Marcus's warning had prevented a catastrophe. The elderly servant's vigilance had protected not only Vincent's safety but the humanitarian work that all the families considered their true purpose. Rodriguez approached Vincent hesitantly. Lord Blackwood, I owe you an apology. Dr. Chen's briefings focused on potential threats rather than humanitarian activities. Rodriguez, Vincent replied, your professionalism impressed us tonight. If you're interested, we could use someone with your skills in our legitimate security operations. Marcus appeared at Vincent's side with fresh ceremonial attire. My lord, shall I prepare the great hall for the gathering? Vincent nodded, then turned to Dr. Chen. You're welcome to observe tonight's meeting. You'll find our actual activities much less mysterious than your research suggested. Dr. Chen accepted the invitation, settling into a chair near the back of the hall as the family members took their traditional positions around the oak table. Instead of dark rituals or sinister plotting, the evening's agenda focused on coordinating disaster relief efforts, reviewing medical research funding, and planning educational initiatives. As Vincent adjusted his ceremonial headpiece one final time, he caught Marcus's eye and nodded gratefully. The servant's careful attention and timely warning had transformed a potential catastrophe into an opportunity to recruit valuable allies. The ancient families would continue their work, now enhanced by Dr. Chen's research capabilities and Rodriguez's security expertise. Their secret remained safe, protected not by threats or violence, but by the simple truth that their activities benefited humanity far more than exposing them ever could. Outside, the estate grounds returned to their normal tranquil state, concealing centuries of accumulated wisdom and resources dedicated to humanity's welfare. The gathering proceeded peacefully, another step in an endless mission that would continue long after current threats had been forgotten.